Welcome to Let's Talk Autism, a podcast from the service users and professionals in the Adult Autism Service at North East London NHS Foundation Trust. In this series, we celebrate autism in line with Autism Acceptance Week by having open and real conversations exploring unique experiences, where there are inclusion gaps that still persist, and how we can foster true acceptance of autistic adults in our communities. Our goal is for listeners to walk away with a nuanced understanding of how to make a difference through acceptance of autistic adults. So, let's get started. So, welcome and hello to another episode of Let's Talk Autism. In today's episode, we'll be exploring being diagnosed as autistic during adulthood and how life has been impacted by this late diagnosis. Today, I am joined by Barry and Terry to explore this further and see how late diagnoses can support greater acceptance of the autistic community. We hope you enjoy this episode and it can answer some of the questions you may have. So why don't we get into some intros? So Terry, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, okay, Sarah. Hello, I'm Terry Hurley. I'm a steering group member for Havering Autism Hub. And I was diagnosed in the late summer of last year.
Amazing. Thank you, Terry. And Barry, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Sarah, and hello to Terry as well. My name is Barry. I am 44. Very interested in art, photography, multidisciplinary activities. And I was diagnosed last year.
Amazing, great. Thank you both for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you both on here. So to get started, I guess I'd like to find out from both of you that, what were some of the signs for you that indicated that you may be autistic? Was there anything that was different or similar? Barry, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. I was in therapy for several years. Originally under a personality disorder, and I was talking to him about many things, and there were just certain things that just deviated from the norm, I guess. Some things which were just unanswered. There were things like I would always think in abstract terms. I would always talk and communicate in analogies, which my therapist said I was actually quite skilled at. And to me, I was just thinking, oh, maybe this is just what everyone else does. That I didn't think of it to be anything specifically different or but other things such as dislike of bright lights, certain sounds, and when stressed, like pacing, repetitive issues. But I just thought I would never have assumed in a million years that maybe it would be linked to anything neurodiverse. It's just one of those things that you do, everyone else must do it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing that. And it's quite interesting. So I think there are a lot of things within autism that overlap with some other conditions. So it's interesting to hear that, that was your experience and you actually had different diagnosis to begin with. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Barry. And Terry, what were some of the signs for you?
Well, thanks to Barry as well. That was a lot of things there chime with me as well. I come from a background in civil service from the Ministry of Defence, and there were lots of interaction issues with people and getting on with people's issues. And I just tended to find that if I went to a meeting and was asked my opinion, then I kind of lacked political savvy in the sense of I'd just say what I thought, and sometimes that to the point of bluntness. It was never diagnosed at school, obviously, and throughout my MOD career, that was the case. There were certain issues with my interactions with other people, but really, it always kind of raised thoughts of autism with me. Was my obsessions and interests. Really, that's really the thing that really made a lot of sense when the initial diagnosis process started.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Terry. And that's interesting to really hear some of your experiences as well, and the background that you came from, and seeing that interaction side of things and how that played out for you. So thank you both. And I guess that kind of leads me on to my next question for you.
Hi,
Sorry,
Sarah.
guys, I've just realised that I was on mute.
You've muted.
I apologise.
Yeah.
I apologise for that. We'll try that again. I was just saying thank you very much, Terry, for that. And it was interesting to hear your experiences and your background as well. And, how the social interactions became evident for you at work, and, some of your interests as well, that as flagging signs. But I guess that led me kind of onto my next question, which was, why do you guys think many autistic adults don't get diagnosed until later in life?
Me?
Yeah, Terry, would you like to start?
All right. Okay. So I think that. So I'm 52 years old now, and I think that possibly there was things weren't as advanced in being able to pick up people with autism back in the 70s and 80s as they are now. So I think that's probably got something to do with it. It's a process of self-awareness. If you believe that you are autistic, which I didn't before diagnosis, but although I wasn't surprised that I am, I think that you kind of you definitely get this thing of, if I don't know that I'm autistic, then I won't go and look for the traits of it or any sort of background on it, and so that's really where it kind of fell down for me, I think, in a way. But as soon as somebody at NELF suggested it, and the more I looked into it, I think it's kind of hard in retrospect to say, but I think probably the time period that I came from was probably a different. Things have moved on now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a lot more kind of understanding about autism now. So I definitely agree with you there. And I guess, did you have anything to add, Barry?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally agree with what Terry was saying, but I think from the generations of those born in the 80s and previous became the generations that were slipped through the net, so to speak. I guess back then it wasn't really heard of as much or talked about. And as for awareness and communication, especially sort of like within the online realm, today you can go on to a social media page, you could use things like Discord and find a group or a page somewhere linked to autism and giving many examples. And I think that has certainly helped propagate awareness in younger generations, and especially the parents of those, but not necessarily those parents in turn maybe thinking, what about me? Maybe, is there a possibility?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely agree with that. And, as awareness and understanding has increased, like you said, I think also things like social media
Mm.
have also increased, and there are, pages now and videos, I guess, that you can almost use, and they can raise the profile a bit, for you to consider and be like,
Yeah.
oh, is this something that could fit me?
I think just to add to that, how I became aware of maybe there was something happening. I was in a Discord group, and they were posting their results of an online test that they did, and it wasn't one of these low quality, oh, post your results to Facebook. This was quite a diagnostic screening test, and I thought, uh, to amuse myself, why don't I just take it? And at the end of the results, because there was no pressure on me, because it wasn't necessarily something I was looking for, I was able to remain quite relaxed and open about my answers. And it came back at least 80% chance of being neurodiverse. And it stunned me. I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't actually expecting that. And that's what led me to pursue this with the GP.
Wow, yeah. So that's really, really a lovely journey, I guess, of going on that kind of discovery and, not being 100% sure to do the
Mm.
test, but then just giving it a go and seeing what came of it.
If somebody said to me, oh, you might be autistic, no, I would just never assume that.
Yes.
Can I just
Yeah.
add? Sorry to
Oh, yeah, go
interrupt.
on,
Can I
Terry.
just, in agreement with Barry saying, I did go through a series of tests with a psychiatrist, I think, then rather than the psychologist, but I did go through a series of tests, and during primary school, so that would have been about 1980, something like that. And nothing was really, well, certainly autism wasn't discovered. So it kind of gives the impression that they knew something might be different there, but there was no kind of end product in the investigation. There weren't any drawn conclusions that I know of. We never had any results from it from parents and things. So we never had any firm conclusions. So I guess that there was something going on there, but whether it was the wrong set of tests or anything, I don't really know. But I do agree, Barry. I think that the best way to improve potentially getting people diagnosed is to make those kind of tests available officially, and publicize them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it would be helpful if we had kind of, like a standard one, that was recommended that helped. Because I know nowadays, like even you mentioned, Barry, there's quite a few of them going around,
Mm.
on the internet. And, I guess you're definitely right, Terry. I think people were aware that, something was there, but we just weren't quite sure what it was. Because I think even as an adult service, we see people that, may be 18. And if I think about, people being 18 now, that's probably coming towards the end of, like, 2006, 2007 kind of age gap. And maybe even then things were still being missed
Mm. Yeah,
as well. Oh, go on,
yeah.
Terry.
Sorry, Terry.
No, sorry, Barry. I was just agreeing.
Oh, I was
Please
just
go
going to
on.
say, one memory of this with my time in therapy was that he later mentioned to me when we first met, which was around 2010, I didn't think to screen you for autism, which obviously that doesn't change anything now. Nothing can be changed. It's a past event. But I think for people who are currently in psychiatric services, maybe and feel maybe there is something going on, ask their current professional who is supporting them to screen them at least.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for that, Barry. I think there's no harm in asking,
It's only
is
10
there?
questions and it could really open a gateway for someone.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's really important that even as clinicians that we always kind of explore what's going on beyond face value. And if, we do have an inkling about something, to actually just explore it. Of course, with the client's consent, just to see, like you said, it could open a really big door for this person. So
Yeah.
it's definitely worth doing. And I guess that kind of nicely leads me on to my next question for you guys, which was, what are some of the challenges or difficulties that you experienced before you were diagnosed? So, Barry, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. With previous to the diagnosis, there was many like what ifs, and my mind was going through a lot of turmoil. And with my rigid sense of thinking, I was saying to myself, I can't really assume anything until I've had the result. And now that I have had that result, I think it's provided relief because there's something, there's a reason. there there was actually a reason why I may have done things differently or thought the way I did, rather than me in the eyes of other people just being difficult or
Mm.
not understanding what somebody said. And people could be very derogatory, like I'm sure many people would hear the terms of like, are you stupid or something, which didn't really help. But it's not because of that, it's just because I interpret things in a different way to other people. So that gave me a sense of liberation. But then on the other side of that, because of an unstable sense of self, it's kind of now shaken that up. And I'm now thinking, wow, I have a lot of back events to reflect on and help to build my identity that I never really knew.
Wow, yeah, that is really, really strong. And thank you for sharing that, Barry. And I could kind of hear you agree. And Terry, so did you have something
Yeah,
to add?
yeah, absolutely. I agree with what Barry said, and I think it links nicely into another thing that I haven't mentioned so far about me is and agreeing with Barry, of course, but it's mental health issues. And I really do believe that, as I said in the diagnosis, mentioned in the diagnosis process, that it one of the big things for me, the big byproducts of this unknown autism was mental health issues, and I think that's always a good starting point, for looking into other potential causes, because I had this, like Barry, I had these mental health issues, and they were, for me, involved with trying to mask the behaviours and trying to copy everybody, and that just leads to a real dissonance in self-identity, I think, through the years, and it's really it's the problems that come trying to live in the NT world, the neurotypical world, and when you're just trying to put on this almost RADA performance that you're acting, and trying to fit in out of necessity, and that's a tough old act to do, for me. I suspect a lot of people. over the years to try and get that, to try and copy and assimilate yourself in a situation or in a whole world where you're not similar to, you have differences to everybody else around you, at home and private life and professionally.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you both. And yeah, it can be really hard, I guess, some of those challenges that you mentioned, kind of being different and having to adapt yourselves constantly in a world that is built for neurotypical people. And, kind of those misconceptions and being labeled as, rude or being called stupid when actually, no, it's just a different way of processing and understanding.
I
So,
think you also, sorry.
no, go on, Barry.
I was just going to add to that saying, as with what Terry was saying, you almost it almost feels like part of a fawning response, and you become a chameleon as such, because you take on aspects of other people because you think, oh, this is the normal, this is the acceptable, I have to be. And so you lose yourself in that process.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're almost kind of having to adapt constantly and fit yourself to a model of what quote unquote normal is. And I think we kind of live in a society where that goalpost changes and keeps moving every time. So you might do something once and you think, yeah, I've got it. And then actually within 2 weeks, it's like, no, we've moved the goalpost now. So it can be really, really frustrating, actually. And I guess from that, and I know you've both kind of alluded to it about kind of identity as well. I just wanted to get your thoughts on how did getting a late diagnosis of autism impact your self-understanding and identity? So what kind of emotions did you both go through? Terry, would you like to start?
Okay. So the emotions that I went through were, I would say, relief. To be fair, relief was, to be frank, that was a big thing for me. I think because you can then stop blaming yourself for some things. You can stop thinking that about all the other, but Barry touched on this about other people's opinions of you, and you feel that your people have maybe said that you're, for example, stupid or weird or something weird or something in that way, and then you can sort of say, well, I know why now, and that's really a great relief to hear that, I think, certainly for me, because it just allowed me to be a bit more compassionate with myself, I think, and also to understand that because there was this difference, people I thought were in the past, when I revisited it mentally, and people, and I thought people were being unreasonable with me or maybe victimizing me, that I can also understand them as well, because it can't have been easy. They didn't know what was the issue. They didn't know what the issue was any more than I did. So it's kind of like a big sigh of relief there, really, I think, from me. It was late on, but it's better late than never, I think, in that situation. It definitely allowed me to look up, the characteristics of stuff and think about how I could change, things in a more positive way, rather than just trying to mask and copy other people and try to fit in that way.
Yeah, thank you for that, Terry. And I'm glad it kind of helped, with that compassion aspect and, understanding yourself better and just knowing some of your needs. And I guess, what about you, Barry? Was that quite similar for you?
Yeah. It seems to be sort of like a very common experience where it's quite a big upheaval to suddenly court the idea that oh, maybe there is something else quite significant about you, which isn't the norm, but at the same time, it's not what you'd expect. I think with myself, because it was a completely big surprise to me that suddenly this was out of the blue, it was unexpected, and then at the same time, I would Google some of the traits that I would already exhibit and then add the keyword with autism rather than me quickly looking up the definitions of autism and then absorbing them unconsciously. I didn't want to do that. And so it was a very big to and fro of, like what's happening. Is this me? Is that me? What isn't me? Like your head just does not stop. Um, but I think at the end, as I said previously, it was a relief that to know that there is a legitimate reason why I feel different and I act different. Not all the time outwardly, because where you have been commented on by peers and parents, etc., that undoubtedly shapes you, even though if it doesn't feel correct, or if your gut instinct thinks something isn't right, but you still have that battle with yourself. And so then having the diagnosis, and then it's slowly trying to fight against that now, and it's kind of like a imposter syndrome to a certain degree, because it's like I have to realize now that I am validated and I am entitled to support, and not so much entitled, to use the wrong word, but it's okay for me to ask for help, and it's okay for me to want help.
Yeah, definitely. And that sounds really, really powerful again from both of you. Just sharing that and how, that impacted your understanding of yourself. And that relief, and like you said, almost changing the narrative that has been put towards you your whole life. And you're almost going against that now. So yeah, that's really, really helpful to know. And I guess for both of you, were there any misconceptions around adults and autism that you wanted to dispel or you want people to understand? Barry, would you like to start?
Sure. I think in terms of misconceptions, again, because this is quite a fairly new thing to me to consider now, the only real advice I could give about this is that when you look at someone or you make a judgment against someone, it's always I think beneficial for that person to step back a bit and ask themselves, why am I feeling this about this person or about this condition? Is it just because what other people have said about this condition, or is it from a personal experience that I've had that's affecting my judgment on this person? Um, I I think it's changing in a big way, as I said, because of the online factor in this now, that there is a lot of information and a lot of autistic and neurodiverse people actually not feeling the shackles of masking. I'm not saying so like it's a very easy thing to do. Some people still have difficulty with this. Other people have learned to accept themselves more. And I think examples of that is encouraging for people to feel more confident and secure with themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Barry. And Terry, was there anything you kind of wanted people to know about the autistic experience?
Yeah, okay. So it's autism itself is one of those funny ones because um, the symptoms and effects of autism are different depending on the type of autism you have, where you're on the spectrum, and that there can be very extreme differences as well.
Mm.
And I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand what the nature of anyone's particular autism is, because although we're all on the spectrum, according to current ways of thinking, um, there's such a difference in the nature of autism because everyone's own autism is slightly different, and it's often hard for us, certainly for me as an autistic person, to explain to other people what it is, because I've never been in the NT world, and I don't know what every individual's experience of autism is either. So it's a vast subject, and an ongoing scientific process, I think, to get to the bottom of it. For instance, nobody actually knows the causes of autism, do they? It's never been agreed upon. But it's one of those things where it's a big issue, a big condition, and I think that leads people to, once diagnosis has happened, to be very individual led on how to help people with autism, and to be aware that all the people on the spectrum or autism are different, and it's you need to take an individual, different approach to helping autistic people, I think, in all ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really, really important, that point that you raised, to remember that each autistic person is an individual. And although there may be some things that you may share in common that are difficulties, each person has their own unique journey. So we can't just generalize and say that, all autistic people fall within this bracket, or all autistic people behave like this. We can't always just make those generalized assumptions and categorizations. We have to treat everybody individually and uniquely.
I the way I've always seen this, or the picture I conjure in my head, uh, as with any mental health issue, because everything is like under a vast umbrella with overlapping um, scenarios. But with autism, I think kind of like we're all cakes, but the different ratio of ingredients differs from one cake to the next. It's kind of like, someone could be on neurodiverse, but then they have a certain area of it which is more prevalent and stronger than something else, whereas the next person could be an opposite of that or a mixture of that with something else added in. So it's, as Terry was saying, it's vastly, vastly varying from one person to the next. And I think it's under that big mixture that we all share a similar commonality together.
Yeah, definitely. And I really love that analogy, Barry, about the cakes. And I guess as someone who does like making a lot of cakes, I would definitely be using that in future. That's a really nice way to think about it. Different ingredients, different ratios make it up. So I really like that.
It could be the
Um,
logo.
yeah, I think so. We might have to make a new one now.
I like eating them, so probably not
Great.
so much making them, but I like eating them. So
Oh, I
yeah,
think we've
there
got
you
the
go.
perfect mix then.
Yeah. So if someone
I
can
can
make them,
do
I'll
the
definitely eat them
making
for you.
and then I'll pass it on to you both.
Yeah,
Just
that's
just
brilliant.
send an email when you've cooked.
Oh, lovely, I will do. Straight
Yeah.
away. And I guess for both of you, what advice would you give to somebody who's just received a late autism diagnosis about embracing the positive sides of autism. So what are some of the gifts or strengths that autistic people can embrace? Terry, would you like to start?
Okay, so firstly, I think I'd say that people ask for advice or suggestion. I'd probably say use the actual diagnosis itself in a positive way. I think that Barry and I both touched on this, is that you can use it to be compassionate towards yourself and immediately revisit all those old things that have been haunting you and sticking in your mind, and you can then basically address those issues, and then you can move forward and start a new slate then, I think. That's the first thing I'd say. And then I would, or have done, a process of continuous research to it's going to be a journey, I think, of self-discovery, trying to interpret autism ways and effects and the way that you live in the world. But I think that you've got to talk it now to be able to go away and investigate those issues, and most importantly, interact with people of the same experience, people that have gone away and had to do the same thing in middle age or whatever, and or later, and join a community of people that are like-minded and really do understand you and are on the same wavelength in terms of being understanding and to empathise with you, but really be self-compassionate. I think it's really tough, and I don't say that in any sense of ego or trying to make out that you're a perfect person, or but it's just a case of being self-compassionate, I think, in the end, and finding that support from other people around you.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And did you have some thoughts on that one, Barry?
Yeah, I would also add to that by saying that before the person went through the process of the assessment, is to remember the parts about themselves that enhance their lives, things which other people may not necessarily get or understand. It's not their life. It's your life. It's if it adds something to it, then keep it. Don't feel the need to shun yourself for the sake of others' validation. If it's part of your life, these are markers of your authentic self. These are what make you you. Also to remember that they're not alone. The number of people who are discovering now that they are certainly neurodiverse are growing. And as I said previously, we may not all be exactly the same, but there's a common atmosphere that we do share, and there will probably be common negative experience we've most likely had before, where people don't understand us. But it's just simply not their life. It's your life. Live it for you, not nobody else. Because at the end, you don't want to sit there and think, I'm so glad I stopped doing that because to keep this person happy. It's just not a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of embracing that.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Can I just say that, yeah, I agree with all of that. And just a final thing from me, those things that Barry is talking about, those. So for me, for example, are these obsessions and interests? I mean, they are just, they make you so happy. and well, they make me so happy, not you. Sorry, they make me so happy, and they just give you that feeling of enjoyment and fulfillment. It's just an amazing feeling. So I wouldn't swap that. There are lots of good things as well to to being autistic, and also I think that what Barry was saying about it's the fact that you as an individual have to live with it, or us, we have to live with it. I've got a friend who doesn't believe in autism, and he said, "Oh, it's just one of these media generated things that that just come along, and it's just someone being slow or whatever." And that's a personal viewpoint. I've disagreed with it, but it's still a personal opinion, which is fine. But I've often said, as Barry has said, that I wouldn't worry about it if you don't believe in it, because you don't have to live with it. It's not some, I'm the person that's got to live with it. So, it really doesn't, I haven't gained any advantage out of it in society, really. It's not something that, you can get any great benefit from. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the key. I think at the end of the day, as Barry said, it's a thing that you have to live with and come to terms with. And really that's the main issue, I think.
And an addition to that would be that it's not easy. I don't want to sit here talking and give a false impression that I can do all of this. It's hard. It's a challenge. There are still issues that I have that listening to myself thinking, oh, just ignore them and be yourself. Sometimes it's not that easy. There are other times where I do fit into that, but then there are times where if I heard myself talking, I'd be thinking, who does he think he is? It's not that easy, and I understand that it isn't, but it's a case of now that you've had this validation with the assessment, keep hold of that, nurture that, and let that build into your self-esteem that you have a voice and you are fully entitled to use that voice and stand up for yourself and others.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you both for that. It's really, really important to think about some of those positives and, connecting with what's important to you and your values, and not kind of losing that part of your identity, to really embrace that. And like you guys said, other people are not the ones living with it. You are, it's your reality. So yeah, where you can kind of embrace that to the fullest, I guess. And I guess my next question for you both was probably a bit more personal to you both, that, how has getting your autism diagnosis helped you better understand your needs and make any adjustments in your life? Barry, would you like to start us off?
Oh, I think with myself personally, this is kind of like a work in progress. I'm still figuring these things out, and as I said earlier about imposter syndrome, it's hard to think, oh, this should be a priority now. I can't mention something to someone and then they give me their the classic pitfall of other people is they will listen to what you say and then understand you from their perspective. They don't necessarily listen to you and then understand you from your perspective. So it can still be quite tiring, and feels like an uphill battle as such. But it's just trying to work these things out. I said I don't have much to add to this. Yeah, to me, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Barry. And Terry, did you have some thoughts for you?
Yeah, I think that you could possibly see the different issues resulting from autism as you can translate those into practical things, practical issues, and whether there's an issue with employment, and how that would, or finding suitable employment, which is just as important. I think you can address that with the help network, and knowledge, of course. And I think that if you've got any mental health issues that have that are or have affected you and are affecting you, you can also address those issues as well. I think that's another way of helping. So as a person that lives with autism, I live within a neurology that I can't step outside of and see from, you know, a neutral perspective, or you know, or from a completely unbiased viewpoint. So I think it's important that you have to, or you would be advised to look at those things and do what you practically can to help yourself. But you're still the same. You're still the same person, you know. And unlike everyone else, you've got your highs and your lows, and just investigate you know, those help options as much as you can, and you know, accept that you're different, but then everyone is different in all sorts of ways. Every person is different, so you know, it's a diverse world, and I think there's a place for everyone in it, including
Yeah,
including us autistic people.
most definitely, including you.
Mm.
Thank you so
Yeah, I
much.
mean, all of us.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. And I guess my next question for you guys is, in what ways has connecting with the autistic community been uplifting or rewarding after your diagnosis? Have you got any stories to share? Terry, would you like to start?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I, I wanted to be involved in the autistic community, to give a bit back, and to also be a part of something that I'd never really felt before, in terms of being understood and accepted. So those two things are important. So yeah, I have involved myself in various different things. You know, the Autism Hub in Havering, and various things. I think that's up to the individual. I guess there are people that wouldn't feel that, you know, being around, or being around, you know, what depends on what the autistic people that are there are like, or, you know, and those sorts of things. But really, yeah, I wanted to involve myself in that, because I felt it was important, and I felt that that I would be comforted by being part of that. But again, that's a personal, that everybody would feel the same way about that.
Yeah, that sounds like some of those experiences have been really, really great and impactful for you, Terry. And I guess, what about you, Barry?
Uh, yeah, I've kind of like been a deer in the headlights for a while, because it's just like you know, all of a sudden, pow, you've got this, and it's just like, trying to make sense of it. And with me, mainly, it's kind of like either been social media or like Discord as such. I've been what they call like lurking, so to speak. Like I would join something, but then not really say anything, not interact, just kind of like sit on the periphery and just observe what's going on before you think, oh, can I say this, or can I, you know, let people know I'm here. Um, And I'm at that stage at the moment. I'm slowly dipping my toes into the community, and sort of like saying that I was recently diagnosed last year, and it's kind of like a tsunami in your head of like so many questions, and like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Sort of like, I did this for so many years, and there will probably be other people there to share with these and say, yes, I have a similar experience, or maybe they don't, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong or that you're less neurodiverse than the next person. It's just that big myriad of different traits that people have. And so I think that's my mission to myself, is to become more active in the community and start conversing with others to hopefully open myself up and be more aware of myself at the same time, I guess. Because I think really we all have this prevalent from birth, so we're kind of already veterans of this. And so we're just, exchanging experiences with each other in the hopes of understanding ourselves and the next person.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm glad, I'm really happy actually, Barry, that you're starting to dip your toe in the water of connecting with people and building that community around you, because it can be really, really good to have a supportive network.
I think that helps to mask less as well.
Yeah. And I guess my final question, in line that it is Autism Acceptance Week, how do you both celebrate autism and promote acceptance? So I guess, Barry, would you like to start us off?
I would. I was thinking about this earlier, and I think I'm not sure how to celebrate autism per se, but I think it's more about celebrating oneself. To be proud of who you are, proud of the way you think, the different ways that you see things. It's a gift. It's not everyone will see everything in the same way. And as we've seen in employment advertisements now, they're actively wanting people who see things in a different light. So that's a good thing. So be proud of these things that make you different. Also, how can I put it? I think always remain aware of other people and how their feelings factor into the overall equation, especially from other people who are neurotypical. They may suddenly have a relation or friend which has recently been diagnosed, and I think it helps, as I said earlier, not to understand them from your perspective. Listen to what they say, and if they like to look up about autism themselves and try to open up their own um, understanding. And I think that would make sort of autism be more generally accepted by people, because as with everything, misunderstanding is the common enemy. And I think it would just make it sort of like a very, very more beneficial and less stress on the person, especially when they say to someone, "Oh, by the way, I've just been diagnosed." It would help for the other person to sit down and say, "Well, tell me how you are," rather than me tell you how I think you are. That would help.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Barry. Really taking time to actually ask rather than just making assumptions. and, you know, seeing things from a different lens, not just from our lens, but from the individual's lens, can really help with that fostering acceptance and celebration. And I guess, what about you, Terry? What did you think?
Just to add to what Barry said, I think once diagnosed, you can use that as a gateway, or you can consider using that as a gateway to seeking the help that you feel that you need, whether that's at any particular level or none at all. I think you can, once you're inside that, as you get into that, you can then get the help you need, get the information that you want. You can research, and then just be self-compassionate. I think, you know, just it's a process of acceptance, very touched on, and I think that it's hard sometimes because it's hard to put your finger on exactly what you feel about the situation, but you've been born into something that's going to be part of you, always has been a part of you, and always will be. So it's not going to ever be any different. But I think just be accepting of yourself, and be accepting. I think be even more accepting of people that don't have autism, because that's pretty tough to understand, and just process and engagement with people to explain to them on an individual basis the way forward in work or socially or relationships, and just try to reach a common understanding, I think, as much as anybody can do.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. Thank you both for sharing that. And I really hope, you know, our listeners have enjoyed this episode and they can take some of these amazing experiences and thoughts through with them. So yeah, I'd just like to thank you both again for your time and for joining me on this episode to share your experiences so openly with us. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Autism, a podcast run by the service users and professionals from the North East London Foundation Trust Adult Autism Service. That's all for today's insightful discussion, and I'd like to thank our guests once again for sharing their perspectives and experiences so openly. This podcast aims to foster greater understanding, acceptance, and inclusion for autistic adults. We still have work to do, but conversations like this help us move that mission forward. We hope you will join us in another episode, and until then, be open, inclusive, and accepting to foster a more welcoming society for the autistic community.